All right, quick break. Knock, knock. Who's there? Amazon Music. Amazon Music who? Amazon Music, where Prime members can listen to top comedy podcasts ad-free. No awkward interruptions, just nonstop laughs from your favorite shows. It's free, it's funny, and hey, it's better than my knock-knock jokes. Download the Amazon Music app and let the good times roll. Or go to amazon.com/ad-free comedy. That's amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Mother's Day, Father's Day, one day a year to say thank you. But parenting and caregiving, that's every day. Online therapy gives you a space to be heard, to process, to recharge. No commute, no guilt, just support that fits your life. You show up for them, now show up for you. Visit BetterHelp.com for 10% off your first month of online therapy. BetterHelp, therapy for the people who care for everyone else.
From the USA to Merseyside and beyond, welcome to the Blue Frontier. Insightful Everton analysis for every Blue with James Boyman, Ryan Williams, and Sean Kahn.
Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to the Blue Frontier following Wolves 2, Everton 3, winning their third straight match in all competitions, 3 points at Molineux for the first time since January of 2021. Also, Everton now with 2 wins in the month of August, which matches our combined wins in the month for the last 4 years combined. Absolutely crazy. One last crazy stat for you before we get into it. Everton in 5th place at the time of recording this episode on 6 points. We did not hit the 6-point threshold until October 19th of last season. Toffee's off to a flying start, and the vibes are high. James here today, joined by Sean. Before we get into the episode, just a reminder, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow us on socials, X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook, pretty much all of them. Link in the description. We appreciate it. And join our Discord as well. Into the summary quote of the day, it was my turn to choose, and I am feeling very good. I went with the Blanco Nino from Blue Sky, who said, "Massacre at Molineux? No, but enough. Man of the match, Jack/Njai. Watching Jack deal out no-look passes feels surreal from my short toffee life. Honestly, all the quality up front does as well. Stats look fairly even. I think our physicality ended up winning it for us. Maybe sub slightly earlier, ? W, market." And I think that's a fitting summary, and we'll talk about all those players and themes as we move through the episode. But first, Sean, we have to give a nod to the score predictions from our Discord today.
Yeah, and I think, of course, a very unfamiliar scoreline for Everton. So no score predictions, a lot of close ones. But yeah, no cigars for anybody on the score predictions. Just keep them coming and, appreciate all the entries. And I'm going to get into the Wolves lineup, but before I do, I have an announcement. Ow! That is the sound of a wolf that is safe. It's not harmed, but it's still looking for 3 points, let alone 1, and it hasn't found any. Now getting into the Wolves lineup, a lot of changes for Vitor Pereira. Big storyline, of course, is Jorgen Strand Larsen, who was out with an injury. He was at the match in his press box watching the game with Hwang Hee-chan, of course, famous Everton nemesis, to replace him. Santi Bueno replacing Matt Doherty, who I thought was interesting kind of omission, just given that Doherty, I thought, had a pretty good cup match in their midweek cup win. Of course, David Wolf, the only true Wolf on the team, is sat for Hugo Bueno, who had a lot of kind of, interesting things happen with him today. Of course, Jackson Tachua started at right back. He's the signing at right back for them. He replaced Kijana Hoover, who got hurt against the Cherries last week. And then, of course, that midfield two of Andre and João Gomes, who we'll talk about at length, and Emmanuel Agbadou. That matchup between Beto, one of the most physically imposing center backs in the league, in my opinion. You have Marshall Manetzi, of course, who Wolves fans are just so tired of, but he will not stop running and of course had a really good moment today. But I think, going into this game, James, like from a Wolves standpoint, like this is probably one of the weakest lineups that they've had, just given the incomings and outgoings for them. So when I saw this lineup come out, I was actually very positive in regards to us being able to get at least a point, if not 3.
Yeah, I was feeling pretty good as well, especially when you look at the Everton lineup. My head is still spinning from their midfield being Andre Gomes, and it's 2 separate guys, both of whom are much better than the singular. But the Everton lineup was quite interesting as well. I think really the main thing for me that I found fascinating that we talked about a little bit last episode, Beto in at striker over Kiernan Dewsbury, who of course started the previous 2 matches. Thought that was an interesting choice from Moyes, but also probably a smart one. As you mentioned, Sean, the Wolves backline pretty physically imposing. Their strong guys, especially Agbadou. So I think this is the type of game where it makes sense to have the physical presence of Beto to just sort of muscle them and battle them, which he did tremendously well. We'll talk about that. Otherwise, Mykolenko continuing to go straight into the lineup after his return from fitness, which I think we're all thrilled to see. And as a result, you see James Garner pushed into the midfield where he actually plays. Maybe not the position you want him in an ideal place, in an ideal situation, but he was sort of sitting a little bit deeper, allowing Idrissa Gana Gueye to roam forward at times. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall sitting behind Beto. Our wingers, who we love dearly at this point, just 3 games into the season. Grealish on the left, Ndiaye on the right. Otherwise, what you'd expect. Branthwaite not yet fit, so Keane and Tark are the center back pairing, and Jake O'Brien remains our de facto right back. And with those 2 lineups, having gone through them, there were some interesting matchups, and I think the Gomez Andre versus Garner Ghana matchup was one that stuck out to me. I think both of them are, on Wolves' side, are very high quality, good on the ball, physical, can disrupt play, and still kind of unclear what that balance looks like between Garner and Ghana. I think we've seen enough of them as a pairing over the last season or so, but how their roles would shake out. And again, as we talked about, both very mobile, very physical, be a lot of tracking and hard work in the midfield, and really controlling the game in the center of the park was going to be a challenge today. Otherwise, we alluded to it, or I just alluded to it, but the other one was, I think, up front for us in Beto versus their center backs.
Yeah, of course, Beto versus Emmanuel Agbadou, kind of the really big matchup there. And you saw and of course we'll get into it, Emmanuel Agbadou is just a very physical center back, so will be interesting, of course, just because hold up play, I feel like, has been the theme of Everton strikers this season so far to speak of. And of course, Kiernan Dewsbury, I would agree, not probably the best matchup on paper. So to kind of give Beto the physical nod there, and of course reward him for a very good midweek goal and cup match. So yeah, I think from Moyes' standpoint, I appreciate how he's rotating the strikers, and I think as we alluded to in the kind of post-match for Mansfield, right, this is something we probably expected to see.
Absolutely, and as we get into the match itself, Beto wastes no time in getting yet another goal in just the 6th minute. Really, this play is the finish from Beto's great at the back post, but it all comes from some honestly phenomenal patience and quality in the final third from all of our attackers, basically. I think everyone gets involved here virtually. It's Ndiaye, Grealish, Dewsbury-Hall, Ghana, all involved in just moving the ball around, threatening, probing the Wolves' defense. But eventually it comes to Mykolenko, who plays kind of a looping ball over to Grealish, who heads it back across the goal. And Beto, right place, right time, fantastic instincts is there to nod it in. And Everton, away from home, leading very early. We've seen this story before, but it was nevertheless really, really exciting to see Everton get off the mark the way they did.
I love the start from us. I just thought we took the game to them, and there's a lot of pressure right now on Wolves, right? They haven't had a point in each of their first 2 matches. I think there's kind of internal pressure in regards to just finding some sort of positivity before the window closes. And for us to kind of come out the way we did, I agree with you, James. There's not probably enough said on Miko's ball because I think it's just so precise, and you can kind of see the lines, especially when we thought there might have been a potential offside, just given Everton's luck with these kind of moments. But just another great assist from Jack Grealish. And Beto, amongst like 5 defenders, right? It just felt like he was like so enamored in that moment. But yeah, credit to him for kind of just finding the position. And it's a really good header. I don't think that there's anything Jose Sa could have done about that. So credit to us and a really good start for us.
Absolutely. And we continued the pressure. I mean, it was very much an Everton-centric first quarter of an hour in the match. 15-minute mark, Dewsbury-Hall picks up a yellow after kind of giving the ball away a little cheaply and then hacking down the player to stop the break. So a savvy tactical foul, but puts him in the book very early. So something that we wanted to monitor as the game went on. But at that quarter of an hour mark, it very much felt like Everton were completely on the front foot. 39 touches in Wolves half. They had 10 in our half. Everton 6 accurate long balls at 46%. Already had 2 completed crosses, of course, one of which was for the goal, and 7 touches in the Wolves penalty area to their 1 on our side. So a commanding start from Everton, exactly the tempo and urgency you want to start matches with when you're away from home.
And you got to credit the away support, right? It was so funny when the goal kind of got awarded, and I was worried because the crowd was like cheering, and I was like, oh, and of course it was just Everton once again, the fan base just cheering us on. And it just felt like a very sleepy environment. And it just, like you said, James, the numbers were so much in our favor, and it's just a matter of not making a mistake, right, to get them back in the game. And of course, it happens in the 21st minute. Everton that and Hwang that. Goal from very little. Of course, Marshall Manetzi played down the wing. I have to give him a lot of credit. It's a really good first-time cross, but once again, I think it's just us not handling the through ball well at all. No one picks him up. It kind of gets in between Keane and Tark. Tark released him off his back shoulder, didn't see him. And of course, Garner just not near the play. I don't think there's really anything Keane can do, so I would probably say this is definitely on target. And it's a good finish from Hwang. You give him credit. He one touches it at the roof of the net. And it's just a really frustrating kind of 1-1, especially as much as we dominated the first 20 minutes.
It's just, to your point, a really dangerous cross in that phase of transition and really one of Everton's weaker areas. The center backs are not that fast. It's difficult for them, Keane and Tark, to defend in transition. It's a space where you'd really want someone like Branthwaite who can really accelerate and get back. You kind of covered it, but great ball that really right around the penalty spot, such a difficult area. Pickford can't really come out to claim it. The defenders are tracking back rapidly, but Hwang makes a really well-timed run and it just basically puts it right on his foot. It's a great goal, but against the run of play, which was so frustrating to that point, they hadn't created much. And then they get the crowd back into it. And all of a sudden, immediately following the goal, you can tell they're amped up. They're ramping the pressure up. Everton really felt they needed to settle down the tempo and take control back. And Wolves made a number of clashing challenges just a couple minutes after the goal. I think Garner exchanged words with Vitor Pereira, who had celebrated a tackle on the touchline. And that type of stuff, that's what you want in a home game to get the crowd into things. Just rough challenges, really winning the ball back aggressively. And then Wolves continue to have, I think, the better run of play for just a few more minutes. In the 27th, Agbadou fires over. This is almost an unbelievable goal. I mean, it's really not that close of a shot, but the ball flicked. The corner looped to the near post is kind of flicked on, and he almost rotates his hips and thumps this one. A little bit scary, but still not super threatening. And that takes us to the 30-minute mark. And Wolves are starting to gain some traction. Everton, I still think, have the better play, the better opportunities overall, but trending towards Wolves at that point. And then all of a sudden, the game gets turned on its head yet again.
Yeah, I think it's just riding the wave, right? And unfortunately, when you kind of let in a goal, like you said, the home crowd is in it, right? They're desperate to kind of see the team kick on. And of course, that was their first goal of the season, right? They didn't score a goal the first 2 games. And so, but of course, in typical fashion and just with this newfound attack that Everton has in the 32nd minute, our stresses, waned a little bit. I got to give credit on this one after watching the highlights. Michael Keane does a really good job of pressuring Andre, who loses the ball. Grealish is the garbage man in that pace to pick it up. He gives it to Beto, who lays it off back to Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, who gives it back to Grealish. And once again, you see the class from Grealish throughout this game, but a super clever flick on. And Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, a lot of credit to him, just puts a really tasty, through ball in the box. And Beto I don't really know what he does here, but it kind of looks like either a dummy or a step over. I'll give him credit regardless on that one. And then Ndiaye, of course, skies it into the net, doesn't use his shin this time, but just another really good goal. And I love the celebration by Iliman Ndiaye. He's really taking into the history of these Premier League clubs and wants to make sure that if he scores, he's going to, obviously give him a little taste of their own medicine.
You got to love him leaning into the banter there with the Wolf celebration. It's so good. And right place, right time again, excellently timed. I know that our co-host, our missing third co-host, has taken a little bit of flack given his Grealish stance and his really good start to life in a blue shirt. But I have to say, the play by Beto here is exactly the type of thing we were talking about last episode, of the things Beto does to create really good chances for others. Because if you watch it again, Beto's movement towards basically the mouth of the goal draws Totti away, who had been marking Ndiaye. This frees up space for Ndiaye to be wide open on the back post to tap it in, and which is a good finish from Ndiaye. But I think Beto's involvement, even though and the step over as well, which you mentioned, the things he does to create chances for others, we do create good chances when he's involved. And I think he deserves a lot of credit there. And you just love to see Everton getting one back to take the lead yet again. And after that, we pretty much get into halftime, even though that goal was just in the 32nd minute. I don't think either team had any meaningful chances through the remainder of the first period of play. So that takes us to halftime. You look at the numbers. 1.54 first half XG for Everton is kind of a monster number, which you might expect given the two essential tap-ins we had. But defensively, though Wolves, were controlling the game, not incredibly threatening. 0.61 XG on their part. Both teams, they had 2 shots on target to our 3. We had the 3 big chances. They were gaining more in possession. Everton dominated a little bit early, but that would only trend in one direction throughout the remainder of the game. 6 fouls for Wolves in the first half to our 7. Didn't really feel that way. Felt like they were getting away with a lot of physicality that maybe wasn't called. Any other things that stand out to you, Sean, in terms of the first half as a whole?
Just how we're seeing goals in open play, James. It's just exciting, right? To, not just be set piece FC and really kind of be a threat. I know, of course, the first goal kind of comes on the rebounds and things like that. But for us, it's really exciting, I think, to see the attacking intent from the team. I think once they kind of get going. But I think for us, credit to the club, credit to the team for settling down after that first goal. It could have easily went south. And then 3 big chances, right? And to score 2 of those 3 big chances, it's exciting. But yeah, like you said, 1.54 XG for a half is impressive.
And almost entirely from open play, as you point out, which is just not the Everton that we've become accustomed to the last few years. That said, a lot of positives. The one thing that I think was pretty clear early on was that, unfortunately, Jake O'Brien was just getting a little bit exposed at right back. And we know that he's limited there. It's not his position. But John Arias was just kind of eating him alive. He had 5 tackles in the first half and was 7 for 9 in duels. And meanwhile, Jake, on the other end of that, numbers look a little rough, and I think that was reflected in what we saw today. 4 for 13 in duels in the first half. Lowest passing percentage on the team. Just looked uncomfortable. Was put in some difficult spaces. And, he was trying his best. He was physical. He was winning things in the air. But difficult matchup and just not a lot of space or time for him, which I think you need as a player playing out of position there.
So we get to, of course, the second half, and it's a quick start for us. We capitalize on a turnover for them. A little bit clunky in regards to how it gets to the goal. Of course, Iliman Ndiaye, he does score after a Garner rebound, but he's offside. I think the only thing I was curious about is, was that a handball? I know it went to VAR, but we didn't really see a replay.
But he was very clearly offside, and then there was the potential handball. But nevertheless, he's offside a little bit. Everton coming out the gates with the type of response, the right momentum, the right level of intensity to start the second period of play. And really, within 9 minutes, it pays off with Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall's Thunderbolt top bins. Ridiculous hit, to be honest. And it's a bad pass from Agbadou to Chachua. Mikolenko's right there to disrupt it. Gets it to Garner, who gets it to Grealish going forward. Grealish has 10, 15 yards to carry it. And this touch to just sort of loop it over the defender into the path of Dewsbury-Hall. The volley on the bounce is so good. and it just top bins, top corner, nothing could even have a dream of doing about it. It's a phenomenal finish. And again, 2 new additions contributing to fantastic Everton goals from open play. It's like dreamland at this point.
I mean, this is an incredible finish from Dewsbury-Hall. I give him a ton of credit. I know I was a little bit down on him to start the game just with the yellow, and I just thought it was a bit nonsensical with how he picked it up, but I just thought he built into the game more, and that's just not a goal that you really see from many of our other players, Jack included, right? So just super talented strike. And, a really good reward for him, of course, has the assist earlier and then gets a goal. So it's just Everton players just piling on and just taking assists left and right. So really happy for Dewsbury-Hall. And we're up 3-1, and it feels like we're in kind of dreamland for us, especially on the road, right? You can't speak enough to just, it's a tough crowd at Molineux. They need a point, and there's a lot of pressure. And for us to kind of break that passage is good. We do get to the 69th minute, though. Of course, Ndiaye clips Bueno on the cutback. He goes down. He gets up pretty quickly. It's kind of one of those where I think we got a little bit fortunate looking at the replay. No bueno, I would say, in regards to the actual result for Wolves. But for us, I think we got away with the one, and really fortunate that he actually did the right thing from an ethical standpoint and just stood up after and not just kind of wild like Bruno would or somebody like that.
Yeah, this is a really difficult play because I agree with you. It's probably a penalty. I mean, if that happens against us, we're crying out. He clips him. He's off the ball. I just hate the dialogue from the commentators and just the general idea that players should just flop and lay on the ground and really try to sell stuff, because when it is a penalty, yes, but then they do it every single time when it's nowhere close, and it's just kind of disgraceful to the game and really disruptive to what was an exciting game at that point. So yes, we ride our fortune a little bit there. Thankfully, the check clears, and we move on. That takes us into right around the 75th minute, and Wolves having the brunt of the possession, no question about it, 65% in the second half up to that point, but Everton still with the better opportunities. Neither team really super threatening. In the 74th, Ndiaye sends Bueno to the locker room after burning him really bad, and Bueno says, "I've had enough of this guy today. I have a calf cramp. I have to come off," or whatever his injury is. Hope it's nothing serious, but I just thought that was funny. It didn't look like there was a ton of contact, but he goes down and immediately pulls his sock down, is waving for the trainer to come on after being rinsed by Ndiaye. I'm so continually impressed by Ndiaye's physicality, playing through contact, and really, really just the determination to continue to burst forward after he's getting hugged, pulled, shirt yanked, what have you. Just amazes me every single time. And at this point, Vitor Pereira has seen enough. They actually have to do a little bit of a pivot because they were going to make some different substitutions, but they do take Bueno off. And at the same time, Everton make a double sub. It's Beto off for Tiano Berry, and then Garner off for Timur Abunam, which was a little bit logical, I guess, given the personnel, but also always a little scary when you take the calming presence of Ghana in possession off for the chaos that Tim tends to introduce to games. And it wasn't long before Everton went from, I think on the vibes meter, everyone was at, "We're absolutely massive," to everyone got a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I mean, this goal, once again, is almost like a replica of the first one in the worst ways. Just another goal, like you said, from virtually nothing. Physical play, there's really not much into it, but it's just another cross that, it's a good cross, but this one's even more egregious than the second one, or the first one, in my opinion, because I watched it back a bunch of times. I think Keane gets a little bit... he deserves less flack, in my opinion, because he's looking at Sasa on the top of the box, and I think he's got to watch him, crashing in. But Miko is essentially, if he just boxes him out or recognizes that he's there, I don't think he's able to, score that goal, Rodrigo Gomes. It's great intent from Rodrigo to get in there and score, but I think once again, you look back at just another defensive mistake, and I don't know if it's communication or just positioning, but either way, Wolves are right back in it.
And once again, we are subjected to Everton in the final 10 minutes defending a lead in a very nervy way, and they were, Wolves that is, were certainly pushing for the equalizer at this point. It very much felt like we had gone into our shell. trying to keep a low block, keep our shape, and backs against the wall. In the 83rd, there was a significant amount of pressure from Wolves. Eventually, Jake O'Brien heads it out for a corner, and the Molineux crowd is roaring. You feel like just that feeling in the back of your head that you have as an Everton fan of we were doing so well and what's to come. We know, of course, that I think Jack and others deserve some credit over this like 3 or 4 minute period of play, because we did draw some fouls to slow the game down a little bit, waste some time, really slow down the tempo and take the wind out of Wolves' sails a little bit. And then in the 88th, we start to make the first of a couple subs. Jack Grealish comes off for Charlie Alcaraz, which I really like as a sub. It's leaving it very late, obviously. I think more trying to kill time, but Jack worked incredibly hard, and you bring Charlie on, fresh legs. We know the guy can run around like a maniac and be disruptive. So he comes in on the left wing, and then we get 6 minutes of stoppage time, which felt like a lot for an Everton team defending a 1-goal lead. Ultimately, it was just really one major Wolves chance that almost ruined the day.
Yeah, this one, I mean, truly, hearts in hand. Jean-Claire Bellegarde rips one from outside the box. Pickford parries. I thought he could have done a little bit better on this one, but I think with just how wet the ground was, I understand. But Rodrigo Gomes gets on it, and it looks like a bullet that is about to go right in the back of the net. And it just truly feels like it was Everton's day after that, because for that to not go in, you could just see how dismayed Gomes was. Of course, scores the second. And I think we got really, really lucky on that one. Of course, looking at the miss, it's a 0.16 XG, not too bad. Of course, there's a lot of bodies in there, but truly felt after that and getting away with that, I thought we would see out the game. But of course, really, really fortunate to not concede on that one.
Yeah, for as threatening as Wolves were and dominant in possession as they were in the late stages, there really weren't a ton of big chances. So you felt like when that one went wide that, okay, maybe we can take a breath. And we, again, did a good job, Pickford, time wasting on the goal kick, seeing the game out, which we eventually did, much to the delight of the visiting supporters who were so instrumental in the atmosphere throughout. Takes us to full time. Everton win. It's a great day. We get into some of our post-match analysis. Looking at the full game, I think this comment from Carter F., the Texan bauble, after Gay came off, the game changed. We need more cover in the midfield in the form of a real 6, not Souček. Oh, also, Grealish plays for us up the Toffees. We'll talk about Souček maybe at the very end, the potential links and transfer rumors, but I did look at the numbers before and after the sub in the second half, and they weren't dramatically different. I mean, other than the shots, which after the sub, Wolves had 6 shots to our 1, the possession was very similar. Wolves had about 2/3 of the ball for most of the second half, so it wasn't anything dramatic, and I do think part of that, and interested on your thoughts, Sean, is kind of just game state. I mean, Everton, with a 2-goal lead, are not going to be super aggressive going forward, are going to be comfortable conceding a lot of possession to the opposition and just defending in an organized way.
I mean, as much as I despise the guy, I thought Vitor did a good job of really freshening the game with subs. I mean, really did that early on, and you could tell, even though he sacrificed, I think, some quality in certain spots, right? Taking out John Arias, taking out Andre. They just kind of threw the kitchen sink, right? And I think what I really kind of gained from today is you look at the change in quality from us, right? Whereas that was kind of us last year, of just trying to kind of throw balls in the box, trying to get, of course, flick-ons, things like that. But for us to kind of score the open play goals that we did with just such creativity, I think shows some growth on our end. But I think we're, of course, we'll get into the comments, just kind of, the goals that we gave up are our own demise, right? And so for us, if we can clean that up, I think we should feel very positive going into kind of the next few games.
100%. And of course, the way too early international break arrives, but we'll talk about that later on. Looking at some of the shot distribution, I thought we did a good job of forcing Wolves into some less than ideal shots, even when they were controlling the ball in the final third. And that's supported by the fact that 50% of their total shots came from outside the box. None inside the 6-yard box. Meanwhile, Everton, 70% of our shots inside the 18. with 10% of the total coming from inside the 6. Took a couple, launches from distance, but you're comfortable with some of these guys shooting from far away. And when the bulk of your opportunities are coming from close range, that bodes well for a good day at the office. If you look at the full-time stats, Everton just under 2 XG for the game, 1.93. Wolves just over 1 at 1.16. They finished with 12 shots to our 10, but both teams with 4 on target. The couple of Wolves were very non-threatening shots on target, very easy saves for Pickford. 2 big chances for Wolves to our 3. All of ours came really in, I think, the first half. I think maybe 1 came in the second. The possession, obviously, if you look at just the second half, Wolves with exactly 2/3, 66% of the ball, slightly over in terms of chances. They had 9 shots to our 6 in the second half, 2 on target. I mean, there's nothing really crazy here. In the second half, only 16 touches in our box. We had 10 in their penalty area. They were, I just think this is all a little bit reflective of the game state. This is a team that is pushing and a team that is comfortable to let them push and try to keep them at arm's length once they get close to goal.
I mean, we wanted them to possess the ball, right? Because I think that's where some of our best opportunities came, where they were turning the ball over. And so you could tell at certain moments we really did a good job of kind of pressing them and getting the ball back. I think there were certain places like Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, right, where he held the ball a little too long, right? Of course, had a great game, but releasing Ndiaye in those 2 moments, what could have been on those? But I think that's just going to come with time, right? And that's going to come, like you said, in terms of the game state. Thought we were very comfortable, but at the same time, that's, I think, where those 2 goals came from, where we just fell asleep a little bit defensively. And that's, I think, something that, fortunately, after a win, right, you can clean up and just continue to work on. Yeah, and then going into our good performances, I'm going to start with mine, and I'm going to keep the Premier League streak going, and that's going to be Jimmy Garner, right? There's definitely a lot of good performances today, so I don't want to discount the others that are not picked, and we'll, of course, go through them. 88% pass accuracy on 42 passes, 1 for 2 on long balls. I think this is kind of where he really shone today, and that's 3 tackles, 3 interceptions, 4 crosses, 1 aerial, 1. And I think the battle today from him, even just how he was getting in Vittora's face after that I just loved the bite that he had today in the midfield. I thought he did a lot of kind of underrated things in the last part of the game to help us close it out, right? That might not show up on the stat sheet. And I just thought for a guy that, once again, it's a bit of a thankless job playing left back, for most of the game, the Premier League season, and then going back into your own position. Just a credit for him for, I think, having an overall good game and want to really highlight that.
Yeah, I was also very impressed with Garner today. Disruptive. I still think some of the stuff off the ball, and I still think it's very evident we need someone in that deep lying midfield role that's a little more suited to it. But for his abilities and on the ball, I thought he was fantastic. And to your point, he did break up play tremendously well at points throughout. Now, my choice was an easy one. I got in here before Sean and just had to slap Jack Grealish's name down in the good performance section because, my goodness, this guy is unbelievable. I mean, there were some questions about what he would bring to this team following a couple years of not really playing at City. And I know that assists are the least favorite stat, maybe besides clean sheets, of this podcast, but 4 assists in 2 games is 2 Premier League games, that is a pretty remarkable performance. And I think even if you exclude consideration of assists, you use XA, 0.59 XA today. He was also second on the team in completed passes, total completed passes, and at a 91% rate, which is just incredible. His ball retention, his ability to wiggle out of space and find someone to lay the ball off to. Created 3 chances, 13 for 17 in ground duels. Like, the off-the-ball stuff is sensational. 5 for 8 in dribbles. 5 completed dribbles was the most of anyone who played in the match. And he drew 7 fouls on top of that. 7 fouls, many of which were really important to, as I mentioned earlier, controlling the tempo. So, all in all, I mean, it's just a sublime start, a dream start for Evertonians, for Jack Grealish himself. He'll be thrilled at how he's began his Everton career. And David Moyes giving him a lot of praise, understandably, following the match, when asked about it, he said, "The biggest compliment I can say about Jack is that he's even better than I thought he was." And I think a lot of Evertonians feel very similarly.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned, 7 fouls. I mean, it was so joyful to watch him like toy with Andre in the first half, right, where he was just like taking the ball and then gets fouled and then he just pats him on the back, like just kind of attaboy. But like you said, James, it was just a joy to watch him today. He thought he was just so controlled, so methodical. And those fouls, right, they make a big difference in game state and stopping kind of play and letting us just kind of reset things, especially when they were kind of on the front foot. So, yeah, really big credit to Jack. I thought he was excellent today.
The only thing on the fouls, I guess, is there was one, I think, maybe middle of the second half where he just was back to goal, kind of meandering backwards, and it's like, you know, he eventually draws the foul after maybe like
but he doesn't
10,
need to do
12
that.
seconds.
Yeah.
Right, like you can just release it and keep play moving, but nevertheless, most of them were quite clever and well executed on his part, so we'll take that without question. Now, honorable mentions on good performances, there were several. I think Beto leading the line today. I said last couple episodes, this striker battle is not over, and I think Beto really has staked his claim for why he should be considered for the starting role. His only shot on the day was his goal very early, of course, but I thought his work rate, especially in the first half, was crazy, was really, really high. And throughout the match before he was eventually subbed, his hold-up play, he was 6 for 9 in aerial duels, and I thought his strength was so critical in holding the ball up and just bullying that back line of Wolves. On top of all that, just this number that I dug up. Since David Moyes has returned to Everton, only 4 Premier League players, that is Salah, Isak, Mateta, and Chris Wood, have topped Beto's 8 goals in 21 Premier League outings. So even though he's really still not all that involved, the guy scores goals. And as we talked about in the timeline, he also helps create space for others to do the same.
I mean, his passing, I thought, was actually really impressive today. That's one thing that I really was actually credit to him, because I feel like that's been instruction from Moyes on just improving that piece of his game. And so I thought the just kind of combination play he had, and credit to Tiernan Dewsbury, right? Because I think that's just one part of his game that we've really complimented him on. And so to see kind of Beto, right, really improve on that and see that that's a piece of the game, right, that's probably going to be needed for him to get more playing time. Is a real credit to Beto.
Just one last thing on Beto. I think you're right. I think this is a perfect scenario for Everton, right? You have 2 strikers who can both contribute, and they're both now going to have to execute at a very high level to keep their place in the team. And that's only going to lead to, mutually improving and battling the other one for that starting spot. Hopefully it's a healthy competition. The only other thing for Beto, there was one back heel flick that he tried at one point that didn't quite come off, but I thought it was really ambitious from him, and actually almost it was not far away from coming off. So he was doing really well with finding others with those first touches. And he actually has guys around him in a game like this in a lot of cases that he can actually find. He's not quite as isolated as he might have been in last season or even earlier games in the year.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Beto. Of course, we could go on, but of course, we're going to get to the other part of the 4-headed monster, and that's Iliman Ndiaye, right? Of course, another guy. Our right side just loves to play out of position when it comes to Everton, and so for him to score that goal, credit to him. Thought, of course, you see the limits in regards to when he gets the ball on the right side. It's just a little bit unnatural for him, and that's not a fault of his. It's just kind of where we are as a team. And then, of course, we have to give a lot of credit to Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. Incredible strike, and just had a really big role to play, right, in many of the goals today. And just, I think as the game went on, it was a bit nervy for him, the way he started, but thought he was a very good performer. And, credit to him, right? Of course, me, a bit nervy on just the signing as a whole, but thought he was good against Brighton, and he was very good today.
Yeah, on both of them. Thought they both had fantastic games. I know Ndiaye, you don't get the best output from him on the right, but trade-offs, because I think the output you get is still pretty darn good on the day. He was only 1 for 4 in dribbles, but that number feels really low to me. I felt like he was taking guys on with great effect. Drew 1 foul, won only 5 of 15 duels, but the goal was massive. And you could just tell he draws attention from defenses when he gets on the ball. He really instills fear in the opposition. Dewsbury-Hall, 4 for 7 in ground duels. He had the goal and the assist, of course. 3 key passes on the day, 88% passing. just really creative and influential and did a good job of making himself available to his teammates. And again, the quality on the ball between this group is just leagues ahead of anything Everton have had in any time that any recent memory for sure.
Yeah, and of course, in today and just how the vibe check is good, James. We wanted to make sure to include a bunch of listener comments, and so we'll kind of get started on that. Of course, resident transfer guru WinFreaky12, starting with him. A bit of the old Everton showed back up at the end, but goodness, our goals today were incredible. Totally agree. Lots of reason for optimism there, even with our backline falling asleep. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall took a little bit to feel it out, but did really well today. Grealish incredibly calm. Ndiaye's Wolf celebration is perfect. Up the Toffees, and I think that's a really good summary of just a lot of talking points that we've had today.
Absolutely, just really good performances, and yeah, there's still a little bit of that lingering defensive frailty, but again, we're still looking at Branthwaite coming back, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Next up, we have Sleazy Toffee, U.S. men's national team pessimist. Some of our best possession and final third play in years should have made this a fun and easy match, but concerning that the defensive errors of the preseason are still occurring. A couple additions before the end of the window could be transformative. Go get them and get Bakwa 2 up the Toffees. Now, Bakwa might be a bridge too far for this window, but I think there is still hope that Everton have a couple cards yet to play before the window shuts.
Yeah, and talking about gifts, the gifts keep coming with more comments, as well as just the commentary on the gifts that we were giving today from our defense. And that's Tim. When we don't hand them goals, we are quite good. Couldn't agree more. Can't wait to see JB in this team. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Thought Garner had a solid game again. And yeah, I think that was one thing that I was really pleased to see is just a lot of the comments just throughout kind of X and the social media channels actually recognize Garner for just having a solid game all around. So good shout by Tim for sure to recognize that.
Next up, we have Nostradamus Domingo.
Ever notice how ads always pop up at the worst moments? When the killer's identity is about to be revealed. During that perfect meditation flow. On Amazon Music, we believe in keeping you in the moment. That's why we've got millions of ad-free podcast episodes, so you can stay completely immersed in every story, every reveal, every breath. Download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
Ready to level up? Chumba Casino is your playbook to fun. It's free to play with no purchase necessary. Enjoy hundreds of casino-style games like bingo, slots, and solitaire anytime, anywhere with fresh releases every week. Whether you're at home or on the go, let Chumba Casino bring the excitement to you. Plus, get free daily login bonuses and a free welcome bonus. Join now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Play Chumba Casino today. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. T&Cs apply.
Who said, lovely to see those confident quick triangles with players that are comfortable on the ball. Don't think their goals happened with Branthwaite playing, shaping up nicely. Couldn't agree more. The commentators mentioned it on the broadcast. Those guys making themselves available, players having multiple options when they receive the ball all over the field. Everton with a bunch of individual quality in possession and really looking coherent as a unit as well, which is so refreshing.
Yeah, and then of course we get to Jackson, of course the build back Beto man himself, and you got to give credit today, right? I think that was another talking point for us of Beto getting the start. And as Jackson said, the build back Beto movement is back in full swing. Great final third play and build-up was excellent. Of course, he talked about the defensive lapses. And yeah, credit to Michael Keane, right? Surprisingly solid again, and Garner was really good. So, I mean, that kind of gets us now into our talking points, James. And the first one, I'll start and ask you, what does Moyes do when Jared is healthy? Does Keane deserve to start? And then this is kind of a secondary point to that question. If we do sign a right back, what happens with Jake?
Man, again, it's just good problems to have. I think take Occam's razor approach here. The simplest thing would be for Keane to move back to the bench despite his good form of late. I thought Tarkowski, again, today was relatively solid despite the defensive lapses, and we know that alongside Branthwaite, I think that sets him up for success in a much more meaningful way. So for me, it's unfortunately and maybe unfairly, Keane does drop, and then you see Branthwaite come straight back in. If we get a right back, I think now you've got a 4-man battle for starting positions. I mean, I guess maybe 3 men battling for one spot because Jared, I think, starts regardless. But same thing we talked about. I mean, Jared has been the de facto first defender on the team sheet for a couple of years now. I still think he's the best defender we have by some distance. But if form lapses at all, you've got guys who are there ready to take advantage of it.
I mean, today was a pretty good illustration also, too, right, of the need for a right back. And that's not any fault of Jake O'Brien's. It's just that's a very unfamiliar position for him still. I mean, he's done a great job to fill in, but I just think, from a committee standpoint, right, whether it's a loan or a permanent sale, you're really doing him a disservice by putting him out there week after week. Whereas, once Jared is healthy, I think every Everton fan wants to see that partnership, right? And I understand as much as Tark, what he's done for this club, you see some of the goals that we've given up, and I just don't see that once you get Jared and Jake at the starting pair, once they're really kind of in full synergy.
Yeah, I think it's still, I said it before the match today, you still have Ndiaye on the right wing and you still have Jake at right back, two guys playing out of position on the right-hand flank, and I just don't think it can be understated how transformative a true right back who can get up and down, contribute on both ends of the pitch could be to this Everton team. It really feels like, we know the midfield is still a pretty glaring issue. And look, we've got 2 wins in the last week against a League One side and a Wolves team who are pretty still deteriorated from losing a lot of talent over the summer. So I think it's maybe time to to introduce a little bit of a reality check here. It's great that we're taking advantage of weaker opposition, but we're not playing some really talent, or not to be disrespectful to Wolves. This isn't the highest level of competition we'll face all season. So while we're performing at a high level, I still think this team has some gaps that will get exposed even more than they were today against better teams in the league.
Then I think the second question is to Tyler Dibbling, right? Will we see him start sooner rather than later, or is this kind of a situation where it's really due to game state? Of course, he's 19. It's very plausible to just kind of slowly bring him in. And you would imagine, right, when Iliman Ndiaye goes to AFCON, that he probably becomes that really full-time starter in December for that period of games. But yeah, curious on your thoughts, James, on his future, at least short-term, when it comes to the selection.
I think Dibbling's going to have a hard time breaking into the team. I think he's really going to have to be a cut above in order to displace Ndiaye on the right. Now, Dibbling is a natural right wing, whereas Ndiaye playing out of position, so I think Dibbling has some slight advantages there in terms of what Moyes might be looking for in the position. But bringing on a player of his caliber as a sub, as a rotation player, we're still fully healthy, knock on wood, and barring Branthwaite, very close to full strength at this point. So I don't think Moyes messes with a winning formula unless something changes in terms of form, and he's really forced to do so.
Yeah.
All right, so before we get into wrapping things up here with our preview, let's talk about transfer rumors really quick. We did have a couple breaking this morning. This is developing pretty rapidly. There was the rumor the last couple of days that Tremidi was on the verge of a move to Rangers. We alluded to it at the end of last pod. Now that has seemed to evolved into a permanent move in the region of £8 million. Kind of a shocking development, to be honest. I think we're all a little taken aback by it. Sean, I want to go to you for your initial thoughts if this does turn out to be true.
Yeah, if it turns out to be true, I think it's a bit disappointing. I recognize from Tremidi's standpoint why he would want to leave. I think it's just given how this summer has gone, it's hard to see, especially with us buying Tierno Barry, right? Like where your avenue to Everton starting striker is. I think the most curious thing on my end is David Moyes has talked about just him being alone, right, in kind of the context of Tremidi. So for this kind of to break out is a bit surprising. I don't see Rangers, of course, just given, they don't spend a lot of money on transfers, right? So, of course, that $8 million is a lot for them. That's a tough one, right? I would hate to lose him, and especially to lose him for negative funds, but I think for the player's standpoint, it makes sense, especially with the relationships with Kevin Thelwell and Dan Purdy. Just a tough one. If we do lose him, I think there's a lot of promise with him, but do I understand it, especially if we could bring somebody right that can help right now? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm largely with you. I understand. I almost wonder if he sees the move as a loan and then tries to maybe be a little more forceful with trying to get his way out of Everton, because who could blame the kid? He's been here a few years, hasn't really gotten a sniff, has dealt with injuries. To be fair, it wasn't really going to be a case where he was able to play much last season, but you spend 40 million on a guy who's basically the same age, and what is that? And all of a sudden, this kid comes in right in and is getting minutes. Fair to feel for him to feel like he's not very highly thought of or in the plans. So for his own development, I still think he has an incredibly high ceiling. He can do it all. He's very versatile, and I hope he goes on to have a good career. I do hope still that this turns out to be just a loan and that the permanent move is a bogus link, but we'll just have to see how that plays out. In other news, Everton linked with none other than West Ham's Thomas Souček. There were links saying it was in the region of 15 million that they were asking for. This has been, in my opinion, almost a foregone conclusion that we would end up with Thomas Souček before the end of the window since David Moyes arrived at Everton. As much as I don't think he helps us in a meaningful way, it just seems like a kind of a silly move and would honestly be a bit of a disappointment given the relatively good business we've done up to this point. I don't know, Sean, give me your thoughts on the situation. Do you think it has any legs? What do you think it says about the committee? What do you think of Souček as a player?
I do think, unfortunately, it has legs, just given how much reporting it's had from legitimate sources at this point, right? To understand where the disconnect is, right? Because I think West Ham as a whole, their window has been shambolic. Like, for example, letting Edson Alvarez go to Turkey, right? Essentially just for a loan fee. And so this idea that we would essentially be funding just kind of, I think, poor decision making, or really from West Ham's point of view, because I don't understand why we would pay that amount of capital for a player that is Thomas Souček is talented, right? He can pass the ball. He scores goals, as Everton fans know, in just the worst of times when you're the opposition. And so he's kind of a fox in the box in that way, and you give him a lot of credit for doing so. But I also look at just the personnel we have, and I'd rather just maximize, I think, like the Tyler Diblings of the world coming off the bench and Charlie. I just don't understand where he fits in when also, too, there are massive needs in the midfield for mobility and for just kind of, having a partner to Ghana, right? So for me, it would just be a complete waste of resources. And yeah, it would kind of be a bit of a black mark to the committee. And I mean, there's no question who's driving this, and it's David Moyes, right? Because I don't understand who else would drive it from just kind of our standpoint. So yeah, it would be pretty disappointing to get him. Of course, I would root for him and hope he does well if we do get him. There is talent to him. I'm not saying that, but in regards to squad fit and what our needs are, he is like so far away from them.
Yeah, nothing really to add. I think you hit the nail on the head. It just is a really confusing link outside of the fact that we know that David Moyes rates him really highly and loves him. So Moyes must be envisioning some sort of role for him. Can't possibly imagine what that role would be. If it does end up happening, something we will, of course, be discussing once it's official. With that, we go into, as mentioned earlier, the international break, the too early international break before we face Villa in a couple weeks. We then have the Anfield Derby. We then play West Ham. We play Palace and then City. So bit of a mixed bag in the upcoming matches for Everton, but certainly a strong start to the season will make any difficult matches and any potential losses in the next few games a little bit easier to take.
Yeah, but I think going into our next match, James, I think we got to feel pretty decent, right? Especially with how we started at Hill Dickinson. So we are going to play Aston Villa next. For us, hopefully we get Jared back for that, or at least closer to back to full fitness. So that's one benefit of just not having Everton for a weekend. But for Villa's standpoint, a very precarious start for them. They seem hamstrung by PSR when it comes to the summer window, as they've had to let go of Jacob Ramsey. And then, of course, the only transfer in is a good one, Evan Gusan, who we've talked about on a recruitment pod series and are high on. But I think, that Jacob Ramsey and losing Leon Bailey in a loan just feels like a little bit of Villa's kind of have to balance the books in a way that I think is going to have some just ramifications in regards to still being in Europe. 1 point from their first two games, of course, losing to Brentford last weekend, and then potentially losing Boubacar Kamara through injury isn't the greatest start. But they're still super talented, right? They have a great foundation with Unai Emery, and they still have plenty of players that will cause us fits in terms of Ollie Watkins. Of course, you still look at Amadou Onana. The center back pairing between Pau Torres and Tyrone Miggs is still very solid. So it's not going to be by any means a game that we probably are going to be favored in, but I definitely think given the new look team that we have, easily a game that we can get a result at, especially with our home crowd behind us.
Have to feel optimistic, having won 3 on the trot for the Toffees. So we'll take a bit of an intermission as far as Everton goes, have a weekend free of the Premier League, unfortunately, but we'll be right back at it. And the Blue Frontier doesn't stop because even though it's the international break, the window also closes in just a day or so, very, very soon, and we plan to do a transfer window recap for the Toffees sometime this week, so be on the lookout for that. Maybe something else over the international break, we shall see. But thanks everyone very much for tuning in. Appreciate the support of the show. If you like it, leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, Apple or Spotify in particular. Again, we're really close to 100 reviews on Apple, so I know you're out there listening on Apple Podcasts. Do us a solid and just tap the 5 stars. We really appreciate it. Follow us on socials. All of the links will be in the description. Just go to our link tree. Join our Discord. Great community. Continuing to grow. Fantastic to see the dialogue in there. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode. We appreciate you. We love the Toffees. Until next time, up the Toffees.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.